Hello, everyone who's watching. Thank you for watching. I'm David Sidman, editor-at-large with Breaking Israel News, and my writer, Eliyahu Berkowitz. And this is the first time we're trying this, so please be patient and bear with us. And the reason we decided to do this tonight is because there's a lot of pressing issues going on in the world, and you might not have as much time as we do to figure out what it all means. So we're going to try to break down tonight what's going on with America and Iran and Israel and what it all means in a biblical context. So Eliyahu, actually, you taught me something very interesting. You said that a lot of journalists miss a lot of very important stories inside of stories because they're usually caught up with deadlines and they don't have time to really dig in and read between the lines. Now, we all know that there's a lot of tension between the US and Iran. And what I like to do is I like to kind of compare the tensions and the detente between the United States, more specifically the Trump administration, and Iran with America's Cold War with Russia. So a lot of people, including myself for a while, thought, okay, this is just going to kind of turn into a Cold War where you have America who's sanctioning Iran the same way there were sanctions put on Russia for the 40 years of the Cold War from 1948 to 1991. And there's a lot of similarities there, and it's probably, that's how it's gonna be. But lately, a lot of developments have been happening that are very different than the detente between America and Russia during the Cold War in comparison to America and Iran today. For example, first of all, it was revealed today by Congressman McCall, the representative from Texas. He actually said at the Kufi summit that when Iran downed the US drone, Trump was ready to invade them. And it was just at the last minute, essentially, that the intelligence community, which is of course the CIA, told him that if you kill Iranians on Iranian soil, you're gonna galvanize support for the Ayatollah. So Trump was ready to attack, and at the last minute, he decided not to because the intelligence community advised him not to. Also in Kufi, Mike Pence, the Vice President of the United States, it said that Israel, something I'm paraphrasing, but he basically, Eliyahu, you can jump in if I need to be corrected, but he basically said that America is going to be the defenders of the free world and stand up against our enemy. Now, this is something America hasn't said in a long time. Who is America's enemy that they need to stand? And he said, we are standing up to our enemy. Who is America's enemy that they're standing up to? Obviously, he's talking about Iran. Who are these radical Islamic terrorists that he keeps referring to? If not Iran, then they're proxies. And when he says when he talks about being defender of the free world, he means America is ready to take the lead on the Iranian threat, who he just established are his enemies. And the third thing that happened today, and I'm gonna read you the headline real quick. Pentagon seeks international coalition to guard waterways from Iranian threat. Okay? Now this is what I'm talking about when I say a lot of journalists who either don't have a military background or they don't understand the historical context of what they're reading because they're usually under the gun. They don't stop and kind of read between the lines. Now I'm going to read for you the two opening paragraphs. This is something that was published on Breaking Israel News by the JNS. The United States is pursuing an international coalition to protect strategic waterways between Iran and Yemen, said Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Joseph Dunford on Tuesday. So basically what that means is the US is saying the waterways between Iran and Yemen need to be protected, okay? Which could mean that countries like Saudi Arabia and other Gulf states are trying to go to and fro inside these waterways and they're worried about Iran attacking them and they need America to protect them. But if that's the case, why are they trying to gather the entire world why are they trying to seek an international coalition? mean, this is a task that America can easily handle on their own. We're engaging now with a number of countries to see if we can, both in the Straits of Hormuz and the Bab. And so,
Okay.
so I think probably over the next couple of weeks, we'll identify which nations have the political will to support that initiative, and then we'll work directly with the militaries to identify the specific capabilities that will support. Okay, so that's a blockade. And a blockade is an act of war. So what we're looking at here is not some Cold War like we saw with Russia, where war never actually broke out. We're looking at war, and it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it could be that the war will end with the blockade, and it could be that we won't have to fire a single shot, and I don't know how long it's going to be, but this isn't going away, and Trump isn't letting it go away. And I think that, you know, Trump really trusts Bibi, and Bibi has convinced Trump that this is no joke. And Eliyahu, you know, take it away. You want to kind of, if you have anything to add, I know you have some biblical insights to everything that's going on.
Okay. What you just did was a perfect historical political analysis, framing things historically and politically. I come from the secular world. I haven't always been religious. Most of my life was actually secular. And I've been running into students of history who are learning to reframe or rephrase current events in biblical terms. And not because they're religious fanatics or anything like that. It just becomes more accurate and easier to use these biblical terms and the biblical framing. For example, you can talk about Arabs. And when you're talking about Arabs, you're talking about a whole world. You can talk about Islam, but that's highly misleading because there's Sunni, Shiite, Wahhabi, so it's inaccurate. What I'd like to help you frame it, there's a prophecy that we've referred to more and more that absolutely did not make sense. It's from 400 years ago. It was written in the Yalkut Shimoni, which is believed to have been composed in the 13th century. When we talk about Iran, Iran is actually, I'm sorry?
For those who don't know, can you just explain what the Yalkut Shimoni is?
Okay. The Yalkut Shimoni is a collection of midrashim, which are homiletic teachings. Basically, that means they're more stories, parables. It's an oral tradition that was handed down. So the actual origins are unclear. We only know pretty much when they were composed and written down. And the Yalkut Shimoni was written down, believed, in the 13th century. However, of course, the roots go back much further. And the Yalkut Shimoni, when you talk about Iran, okay, you can talk about Iran, but I'm sorry, I do not. When I grew up, there was no Iran. There was Persia. Okay, there was the Iranian Revolution that changed all that. Persia was a kingdom that existed for over 2,000 years. So when you look at Iran, if you just say Iran, you're actually only seeing a very, very tiny, even misleading part of the picture. So when we talk about Iran, it's actually much more accurate, much more comprehensive to think of it as the Persian Empire. And this particular midrash, the Yalkut Shimoni, spoke about Persia and its role in the end of days. And its role in the end of days seems very similar to what's happening today. And the Yalkut Shimoni says, Rabbi Yitzchak said, the year in which Melech Mashiach, the King Mashiach, will be revealed, all the nations of the world will be provoking each other. The king of Persia will provoke the king of Arabia. The king of Arabia will go to Edom. Okay, Edom, which is the Edomite kingdom, which literally means red. So to take counsel, and the king of Persia, so the king of Arabia will go to Edom. So who is
Can
it?
you
We'll get
who
into.
Edom,
I'm sorry.
can you explain to the viewers who Edom is today?
Sure, but let me first finish reading the midrash, and that's not such a simple question. The king of Arabia will go to Edom to take counsel, and the king of Persia will threaten to destroy the entire world. The nations of the world will be outraged and panic. They will fall on their faces and will experience pains like birth pangs. Israel, too, will be outraged and in a state of panic and ask, where do we go? So when you ask, Persia has always been and is very clearly Iran. There's no question about that. Iran, by the way, is not at all Arab. They're Muslim, but they are not ethnically Arab. And the king of Arabia, Arabia is also very clear. Arabia is very clearly Saudi Arabia and always have been. So the question of who Edom, there's a big question about Edom. Most people consider that to be what came out of Rome. Okay, meaning Rome came out of Edom, and Rome, of course, became the Catholic Church. And then we have a tradition or a teaching that the actual identities of nations got confused. So the question is, who is Edom? So Rav Pinchas Winston taught me that there is a teaching that aspects of Edom went into America. Some of those aspects are positive and some of them are negative. Some of them are Edom that's going to attach to Israel in a positive way in the end of days. And some of them are a negative, what we call a klipa, a negative aspect of Edom that's going to attach to Israel. But if we look at this Yalkut Shimoni, what we see is that it is predicted that in the end of days, there will be a war, which some people, which seems to be the war of Gog and Magog. And one of the aspects of, one of the characteristics of the war of Gog and Magog is that it's going to be multinational. It's going to be an all-encompassing multinational war focused on Israel. And the Sanhedrin, even before Donald Trump was elected, pointed to Donald Trump as the aspect of King Cyrus, who will become a deep ally of Israel, a strong ally that helps to bring about the redemption, the return to Israel, and the Third Temple. And in fact, so far, Donald Trump has been moving along those lines. This, of course, comes with the warning that if you do that and you don't complete by actually solidifying Jerusalem and the temple, then all is for naught. But we definitely see in the Yalkut Shimoni a multinational war where the king of Persia, i.e. Iran, is faced up against many nations, and Arabia and Edom ally. And here we see precisely that happening, specifically in the Strait of Hormuz, where we see Saudi Arabia is literally being attacked by Iran, and either by Iran directly via the tanker attacks, or by proxy via the Houthis in Yemen. And Iran is turning to the orange man, Trump, who is Edom, the red king. And when you put it in these biblical terms, I think you can see that this is pretty much what's happening. And if you see it that way, then everything lines up very nicely. And it's almost like anticlimactic, because we know what the end is going to be. When you look at it logically and in history, Israel's in deep trouble right now. But when you look at it when you frame it in prophetic language and see the players in their in their prophetic roles, then I think it becomes much more clear that Israel's not so in danger. Of course, the process might not be pleasant, though there's a side to say that it won't be as horrifying as some people claim. That's a totally different story. But we see where the players are lining up, at least in a prophetic way. And this was written down 400 years ago, and the actual tradition goes back much further than that.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that there's a lot of very illogical things that are happening. For example, first of all, I keep bringing it back to Russia. Russia, if Russia would never reveal that they're violating a nuclear agreement. And for a while, Iran was like, no, we're not violating the nuclear agreement. It's for peaceful means. Now they're not even trying. Now they're just totally belligerent. And they're like, yeah, we violated it and we're going to exceed it. And if America tries anything, and basically calling out America, and they're saying if America even tries to stop it, then we know we can reach their bases in Europe or around the world. And they're being completely belligerent. And something else that was really interesting is something I reported a few weeks ago, I believe. It was cleared for publication that an Iranian official with the Iranian embassy in France tried to smuggle in a half a ton of explosives into Paris. And Paris did not recall the ambassador. They're just like, we'll arrest them and that's it. Like that should cause Paris to shut down the Iranian embassy, if not go to war with Iran. I mean, that was a direct attack on Iran. It's a complete miracle that they got caught. Can you imagine the damage a half a ton of explosives would have done inside Paris? I mean, Iran they're not even trying to hide it anymore. I mean, these Houthis, they attacked the international airport in Saudi Arabia. The international airport, that's the airport where Trump and his administration touch down in when they visit Riyadh, as far as I know.
So
and they're just it seems like they stopped worrying about. They're not rational players. It's not like Russia, who Russia didn't want to engage in war. They just wanted to flex their muscles. This is a completely different animal.
So what you're actually proving my point very nicely. Yes, they're not being logical if you believe that they're working according to normal historical political interests, but they're not. They're working according to prophetic interests. And I want to point out, you're asking about Russia. America has, and you mentioned the Cold War, America has decades and decades of experience at dealing with Russia. However, what the Russia we're dealing with now is not the same Russia. The Russia we're dealing with now is a Russia that's taking on their prophetic role at the end of the days. Ezekiel talks about, it talks about Rosh Meshech, the prince of Meshech, Rosh. Rosh Meshech, it sounds suspiciously like Russia, Moscow. Okay? Rosh Meshech was going to be one of the leaders in the war of Gog and Magog, according to Ezekiel. And Rosh Meshech, Russia, Moscow. Okay? So if you look at Russia according to their, not only according to unusual circumstances. We have so much experience with Russia. We know what Russia is. Russia, when it comes to defending
the United
States and the rest of the world, we know that Russia will fight to the last man, sacrifice millions and millions of people to defend the Rodina, the motherland. But when it comes to going out, they have less foreign interests. They only care about themselves, which is normal. And now they're going out and they're extending themselves in a manner that's incredibly uncharacteristic of them. And I believe it's because they're taking up this role. as Rosh Meshech in the Middle East, which means that they're going to be acting differently.
What's the role of the Rosh Meshech?
The Rosh Meshech is going to be the country, the king that brings together all of the nations in the war of Gog and Magog, which is what Russia's doing.
Yeah, I mean they're the only country that's allies with both Israel and Iran. It's quite an anomaly.
Yeah, and right, they're playing a very strange role in that they do allow Israel into Syria to pound Iranian bases in Syria, but at the same time, they're technically an ally of Iran. You see, the end of days is an interesting time because also on an individual level, also on a national level, the end of days is typified by polarization. This I learned from Rabbi Pinchas Winston. There are no fence sitters. There's no neutral territory. There's no Switzerland. Everyone picks a side and picks an extreme side. So that, and this is what happened in Egypt when God hardened Pharaoh's heart. There's not.
Yeah, you can see that even in the results of the elections in America. I mean, there's never been so much outrage when the president that you didn't want to won, and there's never been so much loyalty to a U.S. president. I mean, everyone was kind of like, yeah, okay, I like George Bush, I'll vote for him. No, I don't like him, but he lost, whatever. And now it's like people either love Trump or they hate it on a level that, we've never seen.
This is on the level of the individual issues. It's also in the elections in Europe and England. It's 50-50, and people are fighting tooth and nail for every single issue. And you do have people. I like Donald Trump because he's pretty much such a straight shooter. Like he said, let's break up NATO, which to me was saying, let's forget about the old alliances. Let's see who's holding where. And I think he's right because he saw that countries are lining up. The big thing is Turkey. Turkey, people don't realize, has one of the largest militaries in the region. And Turkey is now getting weaponry from Russia. And Turkey is a NATO ally. Turkey should not be accepting the S-400 and the S-300 systems from Russia. Turkey is choosing their side. You see, this is what I mean. I mean, if you look at politics, well, Turkey should be with America, and Russia should not be in Syria, but that's not what's happening. But if you look at it from a prophetic end of days Gog and Magog perspective, not even to say, oh, Gog and Magog is happening and let's go build bomb shelters and no. But if you look at it to understand the motives behind the players, even the motives behind Russia, it's becoming much more clear. Donald Trump, I'm sorry, I'm an old guy. First of all, I remember when Iran was Persia. I remember that. When they took American hostages. So when Obama turned around and said, let's make them our allies, I was horrified because I remember them holding American allies. I remember the Cold War with Russia, and so this all is not making sense to me unless I put it in these prophetic terms.
Yeah, it's interesting. You read a lot of, op-eds from some of the smartest historians today, and they can't really nail down, like, what is Russia's game? What is Turkey's end goal? Like, why is Turkey being so stupid and blowing this amazing alliance they're having in NATO? What the heck are they thinking? What does Russia stand to gain by trying to be friends with Israel and Iran? I mean, you're right. It makes zero sense to any historian. And it's interesting because there's so much the polarization you were speaking about also comes with a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
People don't even know what's going on. People they choose a side and they have no idea why they're on that side. But they're very passionate and very polarized about the side they choose.
Let me give you another example that's even shorter term. Okay, Donald Trump, before he was elected, was a really popular guy. I'm old enough. I was in Manhattan in the 1980s, and Donald Trump was a very young man married to a woman named Ivana, who I think was also from the same country as his current wife, but a European, very stylish woman. He was a real estate mogul, and you loved him or hated him or kind of both. Okay, but he was Donald Trump, and that's who he was. And I really actually never even saw one episode of his reality show, but it was the most popular reality show on television. People loved him. People loved him. Right. And then all of a sudden he got elected, and I can guarantee you that a whole bunch of those people who now demonize him and say he's like, and compare him to Hitler and say he's even worse than Hitler and say he's a racist, even though he used to hang out with Muhammad Ali and Michael Jackson. And he's not right. I mean, you can say a lot of things about Donald Trump, but no one ever.
There's a really good interview with Mike Tyson where they try to pigeonhole him and try to get Mike Tyson to say that Donald Trump is a racist, and Mike Tyson's like, "What are you talking about? He's the greatest guy ever."
Right, and people loved Donald Trump. He was the most popular reality star. Now he's hated. Wait, how did that happen? It's not logical, but I do believe, it's my impression that Donald Trump has changed. The heart of the king is like water in God's hands, or something like that. The verse says, forgive me for not knowing the precise verse, but I listen to him speak now. He used to annoy me when he was speaking in public. He sounds much more intelligent, much more centered. I think he's changed. He's become the president. He's stepped out of becoming Donald Trump. But I think that process of polarization, and that polarization is not a logical progression from the past. It's a break. It's definitely some different process has taken over the events.
Yeah, and just bringing it back to Israel real quick, I think, Netanyahu has been prime minister for as long as I can remember. It's hard to remember a time in Israel when, Netanyahu was not the prime minister. Now that Ehud Barak's back in the race, people are like, when he was, and I'm like, oh yeah, Ehud Barak was once prime minister. I totally forgot about that because we're all so used to Netanyahu. And to be honest, Netanyahu hasn't really accomplished anything as far as he's maintained an okay status quo, but he's never really made any decisions that anyone can really point to that set him apart as a world leader. But if he's going to go down in history as anything, it's going to be the guy convinced the most powerful country in the world to step up to Iran. And, for a while when Obama was in charge, I was kind of saying to myself, he's trying to outsource Israel's dirty work to the United States. I don't think he should do that. If Iran is such a threat to Israel, why are you waiting for Obama to come around and attack them? But now it seems as though he's got Trump on board. However, I think Netanyahu is good in terms of lobbying and convincing Trump to do that. But I don't think he has the courage, or at least maybe he has the courage, but he doesn't have the faith in the IDF, which I understand, to make a preemptive strike on Iran like Begin did to the nuclear reactor in Iraq. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that.
Well, to be honest, is it okay if we talk about that next time? I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about in one shot.
Yeah, we're going to try to do this more often, hopefully at the very least every week. And if you have any questions or you have any feedback or you'd like us to talk about a specific subject that you want to hear our perspective on, let us know. This is going to be available on YouTube, I understand.
Yes.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Both.
Also, I want to point out that David and I are both expatriate Americans, both still American citizens. We both served in the IDF. David in a much more serious manner. David lives in David lives in Ephrat, which is in Yehuda, Judah, the hills of Judea, just south of Jerusalem, where I used to live, and I live in the Golan, and it's nighttime here. I think this gives us a different perspective, and if this is a good perspective for you, I also want to point out that we are very intensely interested in events that happen in America as well. And though I think America and Israel are so integrally connected that it's all one picture. So if you have something you want us to talk about, put it in the replies in the comments, and we'll be happy to talk about it. I'll be putting in some links to articles I've written that discuss the topic of Gog and Magog, that particular prophecy in Yalkut Shimoni. There's also other things about Trump's connection to Messiah, which many rabbis have spoken about. There's a lot of subjects, Edom, Yishmael. As I said, put it in the comments. We'll be happy to discuss it.